This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Good evening, Mr. Stelter. How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good. I'm energized, dude. Like, we just had an epic freaking weekend at the Jurassic Classic in frickin' Chilliwack, and I'll tell you that was my. I know, like, we all have our intro to the society, right? And I think, was yours one of the trade shows, or was it? I guess it was Kamloops, but for me it was
Kamloops.
Jurassic, and it was like hook, line, and sinker. Man, my cheek was sucked right over, and I was out for the count. I'm like, oh man, I got to do this. And every year we just get more dialed, and we just have more fun. We even did a podcast on it, and it was, the only thing that sucked about it is my co-host wasn't there, but we had a great podcast. It was a lot of fun. We had, it was pretty cool. Trev's been on the podcast a couple times, but we had Colin and James Mitten, so our director, Colin Peters and James Mitten, and it was just a fun podcast. We were sitting around, had the headsets on in person, and we had a couple beers. It was epic. Loved it.
And you guys recorded that right basically on the water while everybody was out fishing, and you guys were just kind of waiting for him to come back, didn't you?
Yeah, we weren't really waiting. We were actually, quote, working, and truth be told, we were working pretty hard, but I'm like, we're carving this hour out. I felt a bit bad. I was kind of like, hey, Rebecca, can you grab me a beer? There was a wasp flew in my beard. She was kind enough to indulge me, but yeah, it was just great. And have you listened to it yet?
I haven't. No, I haven't had a chance.
Yeah, so it's fun. It's on the Fraser, and it was a bit windy. I was a little bit worried about the audio quality, but I think it came out okay. But it was just, it's cool to hear the noise of the boats in the background. And yeah, it's such a special place. That's where we have the Wild Meat Barbecue, and it's one of the highlights of the weekend, other than the fishing, but just a great time, and really enjoy it. Island 22 in Chilliwack.
Yeah, no, that's quite the event. And if you can swing getting a boat and getting out to, or I should say getting a boat, but being able to get a boat in auction to buy a team, man, that's got to be something on your bucket list, is the Jurassic Classic. Between the banquet nights and the fishing and all the people, and everyone's buzzing all the time. So it's got to do it. Got to make it happen.
Well, I think I feel like it's almost like, there's there's a lot of wild sheep leaders in that room, right? We get chapter and affiliate leaders across the network. Gray Thornton's usually there. Gray and Renee couldn't make it this year. They had a family thing going on, but they're back next year. And just all these. So Wayne Henderson, retired off the board of directors. Brett Jefferson, former chair of the board of the Wild Sheep Foundation. Larry Jacobs, current secretary of the Wild Sheep Foundation. And then chapter and affiliates right across the network, having people there. And it's just a fun weekend. And, we talk lots about wild sheep conservation. There's lots of beers, and it's just the right vibe. It's kind of like Sheep Week, I guess. I want to say on steroids, but the inverse of that. It's low key, and you get to connect with people. You get to know people. It's more of a, don't take this the wrong way, but more of an intimate experience. You get to really know people, and it's, that's my kind of knock on Sheep Week. It's just like, I wish I had more time for these people that I love being around. And Jurassic kind of gives you that. But it's just a great weekend. And you talk about demand. Yeah, it's like, we get a sign up list every year, and we only have so many slots because we sell a bunch at live auction. And yeah, this year the list is longer. It's like I think we had 28 teams, and we got 23 names on that list or something like that, and people requesting extra teams. So it's great to see the demand keeps growing, but it is such a great event and such a fun time for everybody.
Oh yeah, it's the social media questions we were getting through comms were, how do we get to go? Can I come? I just like, unfortunately, the best bet you have is getting off that wallet in an auction and throwing your money at it, because it's almost impossible to get a boat unless you're willing to put the money out, and all that money goes right back to the ground. That's the beautiful thing. You get to have a great time fishing with some great people, get some great connections, and that all those funds go right back into the ground for wild sheep conservation.
Yeah, for sure, Greg. And the cool thing too is that we auction these teams off at other chapter and affiliates and Wild Sheep Foundation proper, and they're making money off these teams as well. So they're raising money for wild sheep in their jurisdiction. So Midwest Wild Sheep Foundation has a team, a bunch of SCI chapters. Dallas Safari Club, they have a couple. They get a team every year. They won another one this year. of course, the foundation themselves. And all those teams get sold and they raise money to support conservation locally at that level as well. So, it's a huge fundraiser for BC's wild sheep, but it doesn't just help BC's wild sheep. It helps other jurisdictions as well. And that's kind of the heart of Jurassic, is collaboration. Such a cool vibe.
Yeah, we dropped some big raffles rolling into Jurassic too this weekend. One of them is something to behold if you haven't seen it yet too, the Danny Strong one.
Oh man, I introduced this at Jurassic and I teared up, buddy. I started getting a little emotional and I had to do a little bit of Pilates breathing or whatever the heck it was, and some deep breaths there. And one of the guys was giving me a bit of a hard time afterwards. He's like, I've never seen you get emotional. I'm like, well, I held it together, but we talk about our wild sheep family, and it truly is a family, and we've seen that true to its form. Dennis and Teresa Cabana, they volunteer every year at the Jurassic Classic, and they're stalwart at everything that we do there at Kamloops and all our different events. And Dennis and Teresa are just really, really good people. Their young daughter Danielle tragically passed away this winter, and I got a text from Dennis one cold winter night, and I was just absolutely gobsmacked. I just speechless. I just can't imagine what that family has gone through to lose. And here's the thing: Danny is how she was referred to, was Dennis's little hunting partner. Go and check out Dennis's Instagram, his social media, and there's pictures of Danny out there with them hunting and on the water. She actually fished sturgeon before with them, and just really into the outdoors. And so losing her, felt like you lost your own child almost, although I can't pretend to imagine what that was like for Dennis and Teresa. One of our members stepped up, Nolan Wanup. He's one of our monarchs, and just somebody that believes in the cause, believes in the mission, and believes in our wild sheep family. And he said, we're doing something for them. He went out, raised a bunch of donations that we put towards this raffle, and this raffle package is worth over $32,000. And it is the bee's knees when it comes to mountain hunting. It's got a Nexus rifle from Gunworks on there. Now, Nolan went to Omer. Omer, of course, Precision Optics stepped up and donated a bunch of stuff at cost or better. I'm not exactly sure what that worked out to be. But again, Omer's playing his role. And we rolled this up into a fantastic prize package. So here's what we're going to do: is there's $100,000 in tickets. If we've sold roughly 25,000, and we've already issued a Monarch Platinum membership in Danny's name. And what the goal was for Nolan was to memorialize or have a legacy for Danny that will live on forever. Her name will always be on that Monarch list. As long as the Wild Sheep Society BC exists, her name will be in the headline lines. It'll be a legacy for her. And what we want to really do is make sure that money would ideally support young women to get involved in hunting and the outdoor community and conservation. So this raffle package is unbelievable, as you mentioned. Nolan's vision was the best of the best. I want the best tent. I want the best rifle. I want the best gear. And it's got everything. You get that. You don't need anything. You've got gaiters. You've got boots. You've got backpacks, Cafaro pack. It just goes on. Optics. We've got Leica binos, our range-finding binders. We got the Leica spotter. And the list goes on and on and on. 32,000 in prizes, and somebody's going to walk home a very, very, very pleased person. But really, the key takeaway here is we've done something incredibly special for people that are part of our family, and it's a legacy for Danny that her name will forever be remembered. And if we sell out, which I'm hoping we will, if we hit 100,000 in sales, we're going to create a new Monarch level. And if we create that new Monarch level, Danny will be number one on that list, and she'll always be at the top of our Monarch list that said, if somebody steps up tomorrow with a $100,000 donation, it might not work. No, she will be number one on that list. We do have to hit that $100,000 in sales, though, because this money for our Monarch program goes back to our conservation efforts. And one of the things that we point out is that the money doesn't go to the Cabana family. This money is going to go to a Monarch membership, and that Monarch membership, as we know, when you buy a Monarch membership, the person that donates that money gets to direct it. So Dennis and Teresa will decide where that money goes, but Danny will be issued that Monarch membership, hopefully at that $100,000 level. Pretty cool program, and it shows how much our family cares.
Yeah, and just to speak on that raffle package a little bit, Instagram wouldn't even let me post everything that's on that you can win. There was too much. There's not enough word space to tell you exactly what's on that package. And that raffle is going to be drawn November 4th at the Moon Brewery and Pub in Victoria. So make sure you get your tickets. They're going to go quick. I'm assuming a sellout well before November 4th. So don't sleep on this one, folks.
Yeah, well said. I think it will too. And we've had incredible support so far. And just phenomenal package. And still a little bit challenging for me to talk about. And I can't imagine what Dennis and Teresa, the emotional journey that they go through with all this. But just an incredible opportunity to have a legacy for that young lady. So
Yeah, no doubt. It's powerful. We also dropped another raffle this weekend as well, the Jurassic Classic Rifle Raffle, and that's a Sacco Steiner package.
Yeah, very cool setup. So we've had either Sacco or Tika. There's been two of them step up over the years, and then Steiner. And basically, they put together this cool package. It's valued at right around $6,000, and it's this one's in 6.5 Creedmoor, a beautiful. It's the new Sacco 90 Adventure, and this is the first one in Canada that's being auctioned. They're really hard to get. Just try and get one. You can't get one, and we're going to raffle this thing off. So really hard to get a hold of, and just cool. This is a cool thing where we get industry. We've got a gun manufacturer and optics manufacturer stepping up to donate to support conservation efforts in British Columbia. All the proceeds, and this is 100% donation. So let's sell this thing out because 100% of the proceeds will go to wild sheep conservation. And we've earmarked this every year for the Fraser River Test and Remove project because Jurassic's heavily vested in that. So this is a cool opportunity, and just incredible support again from Sacco and Steiner to be part of this. Full donation on that entire package and doing great work for wild sheep conservation. So both these are on our website, and I guess we'll put this in the show notes as well. You can go over to Durrell, Durrell.com is the website, and we'll give you links to both those raffles. And just a great opportunity to support wild sheep. And if you got a few bucks, it's tickets are $25 or $50. It costs you nothing. You get a great opportunity to support what we're doing. Great opportunity to win, and what better opportunity to support conservation efforts in BC, because those go into our gaming account, and the gaming account supports our conservation efforts. Really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that rifle is also November 4th draw. So jump on that. There's only 800 tickets at $25 a piece. So yeah. And with that, Kyle, what do you say we roll into this good chat with Chef Jade Berg and, grab your notepad and pen and write down some recipes that you're not going to want to miss.
This guy is insane, man. He's so energetic. He's like me around conservation, except he's interesting and a nice guy and fun to listen to. So okay, I'm a bad example, but he's like so stoked about wild meat and cooking or wild food and cooking. It's not even meat, right? I just listen to him and I get fired up, and I'm so horrible when it comes to like a hunter gatherer. Like I can kill some stuff once in a while, but certainly like scavenging stuff and just listening to this stuff. Like he was talking, I was listening to a podcast he did, and he was talking about what are those stinging nettles, or what's that? What do they call that stuff? I
think that's.
And he cooks with that crap. I'm like, that stuff kills you, man. Like you get that stuff on your face, your hands, and you're scratching for a week, and he cooks with it. I'm like, my goodness. So I love listening to the guy. He's so energetic, enthusiastic, and he does not disappoint. And I'm serious. We got to get him up to Penticton. Get him on the stage, get him some wild meat, and get him like a cooking station. Oh man, that would be epic, man. Yeah,
no, it'd be incredible. And that man is one heck of an ambassador for the hunting community. And he's been on one campfire. He preaches one campfire, and even listen to the podcast and find out how he used one campfire to change some minds.
Awesome. Right on, buddy. It's going to be a good one.
This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Precision Optics. Thank you Sitka Gear and Precision Optics for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Mr. Jade Berg coming in hot from Campbell River, British Columbia. Is that where you're at right now? Or where you at, buddy?
Yeah, I'm in Campbell River right now. You know, it's kind of tough to nail down where I am at any given time, but for the next week or so, I'm in Campbell River before I'm off to Alberta.
Awesome. So I see a big, fat black bear, and that's one of the nicest rugs I've seen in a long time. That thing's stunning. Where's that from?
That is from Vancouver Island. So that was the first bear that the first big game animal I got when my son would have been 3 years old. He's now turning 8. So, you know, I had no success with deer and, you know, ended up, well, why don't I take a look at this alternative species? There's a spring hunt on the island. And yeah, that was the first animal I got. So wanted to make sure that I could, you know, keep it around for a lot of years, keep the memory, and eventually pass that on to my son. And, you know, I don't do many mounts, but that was one that was pretty special to me.
What did he do from tip to tail? How big is he? 'Cause it looks like a pretty good sized bear. He's a fat
6'3"
one for
from
sure.
tip to tail.
Wow, that's a good one. North Island, South Island. We need coordinates. What cut block were you on, buddy?
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, we could share that, but I don't know if you guys would be around tomorrow. But no, it was I'd say mid island. Well, you know, probably about 45 minutes from Campbell River, and I got him in the same cut block that I got that big blacktail behind me there last year, who scored 93, which was just insane. You know, same cut block, you know, son was with me again. And one of those cool experiences, we've seen that deer years in a row. And, you know, it was always first light, a little too dark to see him, or last light. And, you know, just ended up making the right timing and that, you know, little sweet spot that we have on a really, really windy day. So.
Well, it sounds like that's a honey hole. So I either want the honey hole or I'm taking your son hunting with me. One of the two. I'm not sure which one.
He's good luck. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, so for our listeners, you know, a lot of people know who you are, but kind of give us a rundown of, you know, your day job, where you come from, and who Jade Berg is.
Yeah, so I guess my name is Jade Berg. I'm a private chef, currently based out of Campbell River, BC. Here on Vancouver Island. Grew up between, you know, born in Saskatoon, moved to Calgary, or south of Calgary, a little town called High River. And then ended up, you know, in 2008 after graduating, I really wanted to pursue this dream of mine to become a chef, you know, not realizing at that point that the dream that I was pursuing meant I'd be underpaid and overworked for the rest of my life. But so I moved to Vancouver. I moved to the West Coast and, yeah, I started apprenticing at different restaurants, and eventually I really wanted to start getting out of the big city, you know, after 7 years or so of being there. It was a cool experience when I moved there, the big city lights coming from a small town kid, but I was missing, you know, connection in a lot of areas of my life. So I ended up, moving out to, at that point, Powell River, where I met my spouse, and we did one more quick stint in Vancouver before we decided to settle in Campbell River, and then that led me to, you know, opening a private chef business and really wanting to feel the connection to the guests. At that point, I didn't want to be behind the scenes anymore. I wanted to be able to interact and get to know the people that I was cooking for, be able to tell the stories that I like to tell. And then that led to me really starting to crave connection to the food that I was serving. And that led to trying to, you know, understand, you know, more about how this food was sourced, you know, going out and learning how to catch fish again. I hadn't done that since I was a kid. Learning and how to go out and forage. And then it eventually blossomed into learning how to hunt. You know, 27 years old when I first started hunting. So came to hunting quite late in life. And, I've absolutely fallen in love, you know, with waking up early, getting out to the middle of nowhere and watching the forest wake up around us. There's a certain really special moment of the day where there's that stillness and you kind of feel like, you know, you're actually a part of nature. You're not just passing through. So I do a lot of focusing on, you know, foraging, teaching people how to forage. I did a Disney show a couple of years ago called Chef versus Wild. Same producers of Alone, which was a really cool experience. And that kind of allowed me to expand upon what I was already doing and now try to inspire people on a larger scale how to find that connection to the land, to the food that we eat, and ultimately reconnecting with ourselves.
Wow, there's a lot of connection theme there, and it's connection to the food, connection to the people, and I think that's really cool. I want to explore that definitely in full in a bit, but let's back the train up here and talk a little bit about. From what I understand, is that at 6 years old you were in the kitchen and they couldn't pry you out of there. So what developed that strong connection first of all, and we'll talk about to the kitchen first and then we'll talk about to wildlife later, but what developed that? Was it the influence from your family? Was it TV? Where did that come from, that motivation?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. Grandma was always in the kitchen cooking. On my dad's side, it was like the big family meals. Everybody got together around the table. And, I guess what I didn't realize I was picking up on at the time was that food was bringing people together. And then, as well with my mom. My mom was always trying new recipes, trying new things. My grandmother on my mom's side as well. Always cooking. We'd have the big fish fry up at the lake and get everybody together. And so I kind of just wanted to, I guess, share a part of myself with others. Like at that point in my life, I think I just wanted to impress them. I wanted to take that, that little fish that I'd caught, and I wanted to take it and turn it into something that they enjoyed eating. So that, and then, I started skipping school, pretending I was sick. Don't tell my kids, but pretending I was sick to sit at home and watch the Food Network when the Food Network first came out, and watching a show called License to Grill and watching this guy just, slaying some really cool food off of his barbecue. And I thought, whoa, that's just so cool that he can take this, raw product and turn it into something that's delicious, that gets people excited.
Very cool. Now, one of the things that you just mentioned was food bringing people together. And we know that, as hunter-gatherers, that's been going on for eternity, right? That's always been the case. But feel like there's kind of been an erosion of that. And we look at, the drive-through at McDonald's, for example, or DoorDash or that sort of stuff. Are we sort of kind of losing that? Like culturally, we used to, like hunters-gatherers, right? You'd all gather around the campfire at night, and food, absolutely, that was the core of the campfire. And that's where our one campfire concept came from, which you've done a really cool series with us on that. But are we kind of losing that in this modern generation? Are you seeing more of a connection, more of a disconnect? What does that look like to you?
Well, it's funny because what I like to say is, in a society nowadays where we are more connected than ever, we've got a device in our hand where we could talk to someone across the planet. We are so disconnected from the food and what we eat. And I think you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to DoorDash or Skip the Dishes. You press a button and food magically appears at your door. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of, working to get that food. You press a button and it shows up. So in turn, in my opinion, we end up trying to, or we end up wasting more. We end up not caring about that food because we don't really understand the work that went into it. When we were, hunter-gatherers gathering around that fire, your sole purpose was to go out and, gather or go out and hunt. And, that kept you alive, where now you don't have to work hard to have that food in your fridge. And, it just leads to more people not really understanding what they're wasting when, they throw the rest of that dinner in the trash versus trying to repurpose it the next day. So yeah, again, to sum it all up, we're so connected to each other in a way that we've never dreamed possible in terms of technology, but we're so disconnected to that food and what it provides for us.
Do you find that the connection to the food is kind of what drove you into the hunting and space?
Absolutely. I was sick and tired of looking at these pile of boxes show up to the restaurant. I at that point would put my orders in on a laptop. I wouldn't even have to talk to a person. I'd just click some boxes on a laptop, and then the next day food would show up. The delivery driver would drop them before we opened, so the food would already be, set in the cooler. And it was just like, well, who is this food coming from? Who's growing this food? What's the process of that? Like growing up in High River, especially like a farming community, you saw the lamb slaughter in the spring. You helped with the branding and stuff in the spring as well during calving season. So it's very different when all of a sudden all this food just shows up. And I kind of got to a point where I needed to be able to tell a story. And I couldn't tell a story about the food showing up from a big box distributor and just landing in my kitchen. There was nothing to romance at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings you out there, connects with the animals, connects with the land. Like it's something to behold. Uh, when you're saying that, you shot your black bear fairly late in life, was it was that the driving force too? Was connecting to your food when you went out for your first black bear hunt? Was that was all part of the game for you?
Yeah, no, it was really a big part of the game, was just really trying to, at that point I was going through, a life-changing, back injury. I was thinking about, changing careers, and I realized that I never had a hobby. My hobby was work, and, there was no other hobbies in my life. Nothing else to really spark that fire inside of my soul, I guess you could say. So, I had started really moving towards buying my food from local farmers, going and seeing the pigs, going and seeing the cows, and, having that connection to the food. But I really wanted to take it one step further. And I thought, if I'm eating all this meat, I need to be able to take part in the process. And that was a big thing for me is, am I going to, lose that way of life that my grandparents and great grandparents had, where, they were able to be self-sufficient. They were able to, have an animal, take that from a living, breathing animal into meat that was cut and wrapped in the fridge that sustained their family. So going out and pursuing that animal was ultimately, I knew that I hadn't been successful with deer. I really wanted to have some red meat in the freezer, and started looking at, your recovery when I talked to other hunters, how much meat they're recovering off of a black bear. Well, it's pretty good bang for your buck, actually. If you, can get a bear in the freezer, you've got a lot of meat and a lot of things to cook with it. So that was really, if I could find a way to get a large amount of protein and start teaching myself how to cook a protein that I'd never worked with before, all while, learning how to be reconnected to myself while I was going through this kind of, I guess you could say midlife crisis with a career change looming and everything, but I could find that connection to myself, and I could kind of center myself while being out there in nature. And if I could do that while also feeding the family, it was a win-win for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I find black bears very underrated, and the public eye kind of turns their nose to it. It's like, well, it's delicious. I go after them every year.
It's funny because even a lot of hunters I talk to have that same, oh no, I would never eat one of those, stinky black bears. They're gamey, they're this. And for me, it all works down to care in the field and, animal selection. If you're going to be, finding a bear along a creek that's been, eating a pile of rotten fish, well, you're probably not going to have the same experience as a bear up high in the alpine that's eating blueberries and is like mainly an omnivore. So it's really, just like when you look at a farm animal, you look at how it was raised, how it was treated, what it's eating, and that's going to determine how it tastes. So and then how it's cared for after the kill is going to be a huge thing. And a lot of people, don't really put as much care into a bear as maybe they should. Maybe that's just me, making that assumption. I think a lot of people do, but I think these hunters that have tried it and gone, oh no, that's not for me, maybe they haven't tried it, in the way that it should be prepared or the way that it should be cared for.
Well, now you're enticing me when you say should be prepared. What do you got for us on the little black bear sneak peek recipe for us?
Oh, well, one that's easy to do, which I like to do, is easy is kind of what I consider easy, but I like to cure the ham, which is great. Cure the back leg. You can do a wet brine. You basically weigh the meat, and then weigh all your ingredients that go into the brine. Cure it. I do about a 12-day cure, and I'll inject the brine all throughout, and then I'll smoke it low and slow, just like you would a pork leg. Delicious, absolutely delicious. It's a very hands-off recipe in terms of, you let it sit in a brine, then you put it in a smoker. It's not that labor-intensive, but it's second to none. That, or, my favorite is still, it's always going to be summer sausage or ossobuco, like, the shanks cut into ossobuco and a quick braise. That's an easy campfire one that I like to do. So, out in the bush, you've got the shanks and you've already cut them into medallions, and you basically kiss them in the pan on each side, get a nice sear, and add a little bit of liquid, some aromatics, and put the lid on and let it sit over the coals while you go and get the rest of your camp going. And by the time you get around to evening, you've got a beautiful fall off the bone bear meat.
What are you putting in the ossobuco?
So basically, we're going to sear that on each side, a little bit of salt and pepper on it, and I like to get a heavy sear to get some of the caramelization in the meat, some of those natural flavors building up. And then I remove that meat and I put onions, celery, carrots in the pan. Same thing. Try to get a little bit of color. If I have a tomato, great. If I have tomato paste, great. Not necessary though. A lot of these times when I go into a camp, I'll bring my veg all diced up, ready to go. So it's not a big production. I've got a Ziploc bag of onions diced, a Ziploc bag of celery diced, and, it makes it quick and easy. So once your veggies are most of the way cooked, we're going to splash a little glug of red wine, which I've always got in camp. But if you don't have red wine, use a splash of coffee. Everyone's got coffee in camp. And then a little bit of stock. Like, you could make it as simple as having some bouillon cubes with you. So that's a nice, easy, mix it with a little water. You want to cover it to almost covering the shanks that are cut. And then put the lid on low and slow. And you're going to have a really tender fall off the bone. On the side, you could do anything, You could have a little bit of cornmeal that's in a bag. Again, that's super light. You're not packing around a bunch of heavy stuff. That and a little bit of that stock, cook that down and shred a little cheese in there. You've got, ossobuco with polenta. It's beautiful.
Sounds like I need to figure out how to get you into my hunting camp.
Yeah, like we were talking earlier about, doing a Texada hunt. Well, I could always come and join you sometime and we could cook some good food.
No, we've got, we don't have quite as many black bears as you do, but we have a good population up here. So
right on.
We can maybe make that happen one day.
That'd be fun.
So do you ever bring game into your business? For people, you tell the story.
I can't serve game. Obviously, that's something that there is the occasional hunter who will hire me, and he'll supply. I've got this elk meat. Do you know how to cook it? And in that case, I can say, yeah, I'll cook your meat for you. But one thing I'd like to do more, and the goal when I started Wild Owl cooking, before I realized how busy I was going to be over this last year and a half, was that I would go and teach hunters how to utilize their harvest a little bit more. Because I know a lot of guys on the island, especially, I'll talk to them and a beautiful deer and the whole deer turns into pepperoni sticks and it rips a piece of my soul out. I'm like, oh no. And me and my son are sitting there, making a French venison rack with my deer last year. And then, the one guy's got a freezer full of 3 deer with, they're all pepperoni, which isn't a bad thing. If that's what you want to do with your meat, that's your harvest. I'm not judging you. But there's a lot of desire when I talk to those hunters going, well, I just don't know what else to do with it. So, I think where I'm aiming now would be to eventually produce a series of videos that can give people these little tips because, ultimately I'm only one person and the amount of time, where I spend now traveling around cooking for clients is super overwhelming. But if I can produce a series of videos that give people that confidence to, take an animal that they maybe would have just taken all to the grinder and let's teach them one cut. Let's teach them how to take the flat iron out, or let's teach them how to do a French drac and cook that. And we have, 4 or 5 videos on a deer, 4 or 5 videos on a bear and try and develop that confidence. That's one area that I could see, building into the business eventually. Because then it allows me to reach all of those people that I'd love to be able to spend that one-on-one time with, but, in a more sustainable manner in terms of business.
Yeah, right on. Where do we find the Wild Owl?
So Wild Owl Cooking, you go to my website, www.wildowlcooking.com. It's still a bit of a work in progress. It's got a landing page and some of the stuff that I do on there. And, on Instagram as well, under chef_Jade_Berg. So there I post a lot of, the current events that I'm doing, but then when it comes to hunting season, the page transitions naturally more into the hunt, and into what we do with that. And then there's recipes that I've got, some of them are up with One Campfire. I know some of the stuff, if you look through One Campfire, there are some videos of us doing some foraging and doing some cooking. And, I think that's something we'd like to do more of. Me and Jesse, with Filter Studios there, and just be able to kind of share, what do you do with your harvest when you're done? Or what do you do with your fish when you catch it?
Yeah, those would be some excellent how-to clips for people. I know I'm always looking for new recipes in the bush, so
yeah,
I'd love to see you guys dig into that a bit.
Right on.
But you mentioned your social media, your Instagram, and I noticed something on Instagram today. Was you had an experience with some whales today?
Yeah, that was a big wow. I was actually down on the beach on the pier in Campbell River here, and I was on the phone. I figured what a great place to have my coffee in the morning and have a bit of a phone meeting. And look over and I see people looking with binoculars, and there's a couple orcas in the distance. Oh, maybe I'll hang around here. Well, the whole massive pod of orcas decided to come right through and come under the pier. And the images and the videos that I shared, it didn't do it justice to really how many orcas there were. It was a really cool experience seeing them swim right under the pier. And it was one of those things where I've seen them out on the water countless times, but it never gets old. That experience never ever does it become mundane for me.
Oh, it's they're a humbling animal. Anything in the water that big reminds you how small you truly are, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, some of those big males, like I couldn't believe the size, especially the ones that were swimming right under the dock, 5 feet under the surface. It was really cool to see.
That's awesome. It's a good place to enjoy your coffee.
Yeah, that's for sure. I picked the right spot for the morning coffee.
But the question is, though, Jade, how do you serve those orcas? What do you put with them when you serve them? And no, just kidding.
Well, we'd have to talk to some of my Japanese friends. We might get some answers out of them.
Oh, goodness. Just joking, obviously.
Yeah.
We're going to want to be careful.
Yeah. On a serious... Sorry, Greg. On a serious note, though, I just ended up getting a thin-horn sheep. We were up dull sheep hunting, and I brought some back, and I'm like... So what's my best bet? I've got a bunch of back straps that I need to cook up here. What's my best? And I've also got a Traeger. So and I know you deal mostly with, or you like open fire, but what's my best bet?
That's tough because it's funny. I've never tasted sheep or goat before, like wild. So it's on the bucket list, really high of things that I'd like to cook with or things that I'd like to experience. But I like to see the parallels in things, and the parallel being in a kitchen. If I had sheep or goat or something similar to deal with, I always lean towards a curry of some sorts. It's a really nice and easy, and we can take some of those tougher cuts, especially along the leg muscles, or the backstrap. We could make it work too. A nice vindaloo. Let's put some spices on it, let it sit overnight, sear it in a pan, and make our little vindaloo off to the side with a little bit of tomato, some curry spices, some vinegar, and some hot peppers, and then add that into the pan. And again, it's that low and slow heat to break down that connective tissue to really just turn it from a tough, chewy cut into something that's going to melt in your mouth. But another one is, if we're doing on the Traeger, smoked anything is good. I like to cure everything just a little bit before I smoke it. So I'll do a basic blend. It's a 2-to-1 ratio of demerara sugar, raw sugar, to kosher salt. So all my fish, even if I'm just doing it on a cedar plank, I'll sprinkle that on the night before, let it sit, kind of firm up the meat a little bit. And then I can take the temperature lower, add a little bit of smoke to it, and it changes the texture completely. So, something like that with a little bit of risotto, which risotto is intimidating to some people, but call me up anytime. It's fairly easy to make it work, and it's one of those meals that's going to really blow you away.
Awesome. You've inspired me, and I may be reaching out, and if you happen to be in Victoria, let me know, and you can come try some dull sheep meat.
Oh yeah, no, that's a dream for sure.
Well, you know where to go to fulfill that dream.
Yeah, well,
gotta go to the shelters.
When do I come to Victoria next, Kyle? You might regret the invite.
So you have one kid, or?
I've got two boys. So one is 8 years old and the other is 3, turning 4. And they were, they're involved in pretty much every wild food adventure, from mushroom picking to berry picking to, going out and finding licorice fern root. And then ultimately the hunting. They've both been, from a very young age, it's just normal to them. And that's something that I can't say a ton of children, especially when you think about these large cities, Not a lot of kids understand the entirety or, the gravity of the situation of what it takes to get from that animal to the meat that you buy at the grocery store wrapped in plastic on a piece of styrofoam.
Yeah, how important was it to you and your wife bringing your children into your journey into the wild food?
Well, for me, it seemed natural. From a very young age. My first memories of being in the outdoors are fishing with Grandpa in northern Saskatchewan, and seeing that effort to reward. We would go out, we would go spend hours on the lake. We'd come back with a bunch of northern pike and walleye, and then we would all eat. We would all feast, and that to me was some of those core memories that I really wanted them to be able to grow up. And I looked at when I lived in Vancouver. I taught kids cooking classes for a while with a program called Super Chefs, and we would talk to the kids. Oh, who knows where your food comes from, or where do tomatoes come from? Everyone, their hands went up. Oh, Superstore, Walmart. So we took them to the UBC farm at one point, and these kids had never seen a tomato growing on a plant. It was so foreign to them that a tomato could be on a plant. It was out of place. So, that was one thing that I thought, wherever we raise our kids, at that point, we were just talking about kids, but then when it became a reality, it was really important that, they learned how to grow a garden. They're there learning how to take care of that. They're learning how to tie your hook on to catch a trout, how to then cook that trout after you've gutted it. And, I wanted them to understand too that, taking an animal's life is not easy. It's a necessary part of how we live our lives. Like for this bear on the wall behind me, I remember my 3, almost 4-year-old son. I pulled the trigger, and immediately, like, waves of emotion came over, which I'm not afraid to admit. And my son looks at me. He goes, "Dad, why are you sad? I thought this is what we came to do." And I was like, "Yeah, it is what we came to do, but it's not about the pull of the trigger. It's not about the fact that we pulled the trigger. Woohoo! Yeah, we can have that celebration. It's not bad to have that celebration, but it's also okay to know that we just ended that animal's life. So now it's my job and my commitment to do the best I can with that animal, so that life was not taken in vain, so that we can cook it and we can make sure that animal is respected every way through the process." Which to me meant getting that hide off right away, making sure we get that meat cooling, not parading it around town and, taking it to show 4 or 5 buddies. I was excited, but I knew that the first and foremost at that point, it was the end of May in a heat wave, a 28-degree day. The only thing I cared about was getting that meat cool as fast as I could. And, very overwhelming for a first-time hunter alone. I'd never hunted with anybody before, so I had no, mentorship in the field. I had a couple buddies who had given me lots of advice, but it's that whole, teaching him that what we do to put that food on the table has an impact. Everything has an impact, whether you're farming, whether you're fishing, everything will have an impact. But if we can make sure that impact that we have is minimal, while also respecting the environment that it lives in, the animal itself, right from when it was alive all the way through to, the last portion that we pull out of the freezer, it's something that I believe, will breed a lot of respect for him in the future and for the respect that he has for, the outdoors.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experience to share with your son, and both of your first times walking up to a dead animal, and it's a tough emotion, or shouldn't even just say emotion, a whirlwind of emotions to express and share with others who haven't experienced it.
Totally.
So that's cool. That's something he'll remember for the rest of his life, and will stick with you to the rest of your life as well.
Oh, I really think so. And, it's those kind of formative moments that, whether he chooses to be a hunter when he's older or not, he'll at least know that, this is where my food comes from. This is, how, if I ever needed to, this is how I break down an animal from a whole animal into the primal cuts. And that's something that I at 7 years old or 8 years old myself, there was no way I was doing that. I was, eating craft dinner and watching Looney Tunes. So it's interesting to see just how much of a sponge he is in terms of taking this information in.
Yeah, gonna create an addict. I've got a couple rolling around now. Been taking my kids since they were infants into the woods and fishing, and I don't know, it's tough to beat that experience. You can share it with family and friends, but sharing it with your kids is a whole nother level that I wish everyone gets to experience. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
so do you do the same with fishing with your children? You get them out there on the boat and out on the water and
Yeah, I get
where
about
you
mainly
can.
we do a lot of trout fishing more than anything because we're kind of happy that we have friends with boats versus having a boat ourselves at this point in life. But it's really cool that that's something we look forward to. Every fall, especially we don't get out as much in the summertime, but in the fall, it's nice. Go have a campfire by the lake. Get the cast iron out and just spend a whole day hanging out at the lake. Him practicing his casting or tying different lures on and to be able to see him progress now to the point where he's comfortable cleaning the fish, and then he's got a method that he does where it's in the cast iron and it comes out perfect every time. And if we've got one trout, I almost know for a fact I'm not getting any. He's very possessive over it, which is it's good. He's proud of what he's able to accomplish and proud that he can put that food on the plate. And I see a lot of myself in him when it comes to that pride that he takes when he's providing sustenance, even if it's just for himself at that point.
Yeah, no, it's a skill to have, and he's learning to hunt and fish from his old man, and he's got a pretty good teacher for when it comes to cooking as well, I'd imagine. So
yeah, well, I think what's been really cool about this journey, when you talk about a teacher, yeah, I can teach him how to cook anything. But in the beginning, we did a lot of learning together. Like in terms of field dressing, I'd never field dressed an animal in my life. And it wasn't like I had someone to be like, hey, do you want to show me right here, right now? No amount of YouTube videos you watch can really prepare you for your first time field dressing a, 300, 400 pound bear or whatever he weighed with. So, it's one of those experiences where we've had a lot of firsts together, which is really cool that we were able to learn together and, some trial and error, but ultimately we're growing and we're going through these experiences, at parallel experiences at completely different ages.
yeah, no, it's field dressing an animal for the first time is, I grew up hunting and fishing. It was always something that I did, but that first time going out deer hunting alone and having to deal with the deer by myself, it was like, I've watched this a lot, but this is different.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can only imagine by yourself, and, if you don't have YouTube on hand while you're out in the bush trying to sort out what to do, it could get interesting.
Yeah, no, it was, but it's part of what makes us better hunters. And, one thing that I always try to teach him is, we strive for each hunt to be better than the last. And I think that's an important way of looking at life in general. In terms of, how clean was our kill, how clean was the field dressing process, how quick were we able to find that animal and locate it, how and we always take a step back, and I'll ask him after in a little debrief, well, how do you think that went, buddy? Oh, it went pretty good. We could have found him a little sooner, whatever the feedback is. Right. And to know that, we don't want to, ever be complacent when we're out in the outdoors hunting, with firearms or bow and arrow. It's something that, we've got to keep, striving to be better and striving to be good. And I think that's a good way to look at life in general is, us as a whole, as a hunting community, we're doing a really good job here in BC in particular. And there's always ways that we can strive to, whether it's education, having conversations like this, there's always ways that we can collectively improve and collectively, try and convey that message to people who aren't hunters that, we aren't these barbarians that they see us as. And, we're just, regular Joes trying to put good quality food on the table.
Yeah, you seem to be quite the ambassador when it comes to sharing that message. If you follow your Instagram, that's honestly the only place I follow you, but I didn't know of the other things. But your Instagram it shows everything you can do in the outdoors. You're showing foraging, you're showing fishing, you're searching the beach for oysters, you're digging up clams, and it's almost like you can point people just to your Instagram to be like, see, this is what we're actually about. We're not we're not the barbarians or the savages running around just shooting things and taking what we want. There's a whole lot that goes into it, and there's a story to tell, and you do a great job of telling that story.
No, I appreciate that, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, trying to be nice.
Yeah. Oh well, I'll take it this time.
So when you go out foraging, what do you forage for the most? Because you're on Vancouver Island. There's some good that the rainforest has some great foraging.
It's tough. It's tough to say because it's really seasonally dependent for me. When the mushrooms aren't popping, I'm on the shoreline, and there's seaweed everywhere. There's so many edible things on that shoreline. Multiple different varieties of seaweed. There's sea asparagus. You get into the oysters, digging for clams. It's really you take a few steps off of the rocks, and there's urchin down there, which is spectacular. But we live in a special place where you can go and do that on a September, November day, and then you can go into the forest and start picking chanterelles. You can go pick oyster mushrooms. You can go hopefully find a pine mushroom. So it's really cool, and the amount of diversity that we have here. This spring, before the bear hunt, we were looking for elderflowers to try and make some reductions, like some tinctures, and try and extract some of that flavor. I love licorice fern root. It's, pound for pound, sweeter than sugarcane, which is really interesting to try and take something that sweet naturally that's growing on the side of the maple tree in a bunch of moss. But mushrooms, I would say, are high on the list. It's one of those, in my opinion, natural flavors that go so good with wild game, whether that be grouse or deer, elk, bear, any of those. And another one is any of the conifer trees around here. The conifer trees are a great source of flavor, especially in the springtime when you can get those fir tips. Make some pickled fir tips. I will make a mignonette, which is like a sauce for oysters with fir tips in there, and it brings that really cool story, which to me I can tell through the dish, where the forest meets the ocean, and it's a really cool meshing of flavors, and it's got these neat citrusy flavors in it, a little bit sour, a little bit tart. And then there's the wonderful world of wild greens out here. Miner's lettuce, sheep sorrel, plantain. Sheep sorrel is one of my favorite. It's got a really sour, almost like a sour candy taste to it. And, you'll find it, I find it growing on my front lawn, but you'll find it along logging roads. And that is just a natural pairing, again, for seafood. Some seared scallops with a little bit of sheep sorrel cut up on top. It's to die for. It's got that sour, lovely taste, and it's just there is not a step you can take in the forest here. Maybe two steps, but there's not far that you can go without stepping over something that has high potential as a good edible food.
Yeah, it's we live in an incredible place that's very diverse. We need to get the Chef Jade Berg hunting show through BC. We're going sheep hunting. What are we foraging? What are we eating? We're going deer hunting. What are we foraging? What are we eating?
Yeah,
I would tune in.
Oh, right. Yeah,
tune in.
That's definitely the dream one day. It was a really cool experience last year going to meet up with a couple of guys in the Kootenays and doing a bunch of mushroom foraging, going and getting a grouse, and then ultimately cooking that grouse over the fire and cooking a risotto over the fire by headlamp with the pine mushrooms. And it literally, except for the rice, everything that was in that dish was from the woods around us, which to me was just such a cool testament. There's so many different unique areas in BC, and you can take a lot of inspiration in those natural ingredients, and you can have these cool regional flavor pockets of British Columbia. And really the opportunities are endless in terms of combinations and what we're cooking. And it's a really cool way to further your connection, because a lot of us hunters are already going out and we are connected. We know more about what's moving around in that landscape. We know more about, the cycles that the forests are going through than a lot of other people. And then all of a sudden we're taking all of that and we're going back to camp and we're excited. We're creating these cool dishes. It just strengthens that connection, which I crave.
Yeah, no, I'm envious of it, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners right now are envious as well, because I find I'm constantly, walking through the woods, following deer tracks, and kick up a mushroom, and I'm like, I wonder if I can eat that. And then you keep going, and you see some berries. I wonder if I could eat that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a skill I would love to acquire, but
Well, and then
right
all
now
it
I
just
don't
takes
trust my
is just a
mushroom
little
game.
bit of getting comfortable with one ingredient, and that's the way I like to put it a lot. Is if you look at it like a mountain, it becomes overwhelming. You're not going to want to climb that whole mountain, but if you look at it as baby steps, so getting a book from the bookstore, and flipping open. Well, this year I'm going to make it my goal to identify, say, miner's lettuce and sheep sorrel. Great. You focus on those two things, because if you start looking at everything around you, you're going to get overwhelmed and go, I'm just going to focus on what I know. But once you get comfortable with those two things, it almost, you build that confidence, and then it becomes natural to, well, let's flip to the next section. Let's flip over some berries. I got a lot of berries here. I've never picked them, and get comfortable with one berry, because if you try to, be the champion that's going to identify every berry in the woods, you're going to get something wrong. But if you can identify that huckleberry 10 out of 10 times, then it makes it easier. The same Vaxilium family. Well, there's blueberries. We can start looking at all these other berries and build that confidence. And before you know it, a couple of years have gone by, and you're looking around going, I could eat way more in this forest than I thought I could. And the cool thing about all of that is that the learning never ends. I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty confident. And then I go out with somebody that I've never foraged with, and they show me something that I never would have thought of eating. And one example would be milk thistle root. I never would have thought of eating milk thistle root. You take it, you clean it up real good, you kind of boil it like a parsnip, puree it. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So it's one of these things that, no matter how much there's always something else to learn. So it's always kind of that same strive to, well, what's around the next corner? And, you're never going to get to a point where you know it all. And if you do, well, where's the next region?
Yeah, that's true. So you never stop learning, and it's a good way to approach life too, is just never stop learning, and you'll enjoy more as you go.
Absolutely.
So where's the next adventure going to take you? What's your next hunting or fishing plan? Where?
So the next one, hopefully before the end of the month, or early September, get out off the west coast of Cayucit here and do some tuna fishing. And that'll be the first for me. I've never gone out and pursuing them. Spent a lot of time up in Cayucit area this year, which is about 3 hours northwest of Campbell River. You drive an hour and a half by truck or by highway, and then an hour and a half on a logging road, and you get to Fair Harbor and then take a boat. So it's nice and remote. That'll be a cool adventure if that one comes together. But then the one that's for sure coming together is going to Texada Island and getting an early deer hunt out of the way and a little bit of mushroom foraging. I'm actually praying for a little bit more rain here. We haven't had much this year. Get a couple of good days of rain in early September before that deer hunt, and the chanterelles will be popping up everywhere. And as the year goes on, I'm going to be spending a couple of weeks in Germany cooking for the Canadian Luge Team. I go over, last year was Latvia, this year Germany. And I'm going to do some, definitely do my best to get out for a couple of days with a local guy I know there and go and see what's available in the countryside there, which would be an experience altogether.
Now, how do you get roped into being the chef for the Canadian Luge Team? Like, how does that come about? Seems like a rare one.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not something. They had never had a chef before. And I think a lot of, the publicity around the Chef versus Wild, when that came out, that one really helped in terms of, putting my name in front of people that maybe it wouldn't have come in front of. But it just so happened that a friend of mine that I went to elementary school with works at Mount Royal, and she helps with the culinary team or the culinary program there. And she had a job come across her desk. They were looking for a chef for the National Luge Team. And the first person she thought of was me. She's like, "Oh, this is right up your alley. You're so personable. You love to travel. Why don't you interview with them?" And I took one look at the dates, and I went, "Oh, Norway. Oh, Latvia. Oh, Germany. Yeah. Well, sign me up. And now it's kind of turned into a bit of a trying to develop the program for them, so we can do a lot of learning as well. Learn about the things that we're eating and whole foods and nutrition. And then in turn, it strengthens my ability to cook because I get the opportunity to go to markets that I never have a chance to in different countries in Europe. And and really get to know food from a different perspective in these countries, which helps me become a better cook. So it was one of those opportunities that just kind of came across my desk randomly, and very glad it did, and hopefully develop a program so these athletes can really focus on, their game instead of focusing on, well, what do I need to put in my body? If I can take that part of the equation out and take that off their plate, then yeah, they can hopefully focus on getting up on that podium.
Yeah, that's got to be a pretty cool and rewarding job. You travel the world with these people, you become family, and it's when they're winning, you're winning kind of deal, I bet.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool because then, it's somewhere that I never imagined representing, especially as a cook. I never imagined being able to represent Canada kind of on that stage or help support the athletes. But when you're out there as the team and you're all wearing your Team Canada jackets, you're like, I'm just a cook that was slanging burgers at one point in my life. And, now we're getting to the point where I get to travel and do these really cool things. And food is, again, one of those things that brings everybody together. So you see these athletes at the end of their hard day, instead of just getting takeout or whatever from the hotel and going up to their room, and we're all talking about the day, talking about strategy. We're all in the same room together, and it really makes a big difference in terms of that sense of community and that sense of team.
For sure. Now, do you find, as people get to know you when you're meeting them out wherever you're at with the luge team, I'm sure you meet all sorts of people, and they start finding out more about you and that you're a hunter. And do you get those awkward conversations that you got to kind of, this is what we're about? It's not just out there killing, and do us some justice abroad.
Yeah, well, and one of those opportunities came last year in Whistler. We got to talking a little bit just about life, and I had the opportunity to talk to them about hunting in general. And the one guy, no, hunters, they're evil. They're just out there, pillaging. And so we said, you know what? Have you ever talked to a hunter? Have you ever had this opportunity to change, to change your perspective? And, well, no, but, so we started talking about my perspective and everything that I've talked about tonight, about connection and, why I do it, getting my kids involved and that self-sufficiency. But ultimately, I can take a little bit of my dependency off of this factory farm food and put that onus on myself. And that was one thing where, after a long conversation and a series of conversations, and we ended up watching those one campfire videos with the team. And for them to, after, he comes up to me and says, I never, ever would have thought that I agreed with hunting. But the more we talk and the more I watch these videos, the more I realize that I think I agree with hunting more than I really realized I did. More so than going to Superstore and buying my meat. And said, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. Most of our world lives like that. But I never would have had this opportunity to have this conversation about an Olympian. And when they meet me, like, oh, I'm a private chef. I'm this high-end chef. And a lot of people think that, fine dining is complete opposite of these people who are going out and hunting. And, it can be a mix of both. We can have, the pursuit of excellence on a plate while also pursuing wild game and excellence in wild food.
Well, being able to use the one campfire to share your message, like you said, that's what that was designed for, intended for, and it sounds like you're doing a great job being an ambassador for it.
Yeah, it was funny because I think it was the Romanian team. I can't remember, one of the teams there. They had a chef, and the Team Canada got to talking, and we were talking. Well, I hunt bears. Oh, really? You hunt bears? Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, I started, showing some pictures, talking a lot about bear meat and how I like to prepare it. And they were really excited about that. Well, the next day, I guess they were talking to the other team from another country, and they said, oh, we've got a chef. They said, oh, we've got a chef too. Said, but he's terrified. He won't go outside. There's been raccoons on the porch. And I go, yeah, well, our chef, he likes to hunt bears. Oh, no way. And he said, yeah, and he cooks them too. So it was a bit of a, then I'd walking through, and, the other teams, oh, that's the chef that hunts. And to the Europeans, it was like, oh, so that's something to be celebrated, where, in North America in particular, we're very differently, I don't know if it's our upbringing or if it's what we see in the media, but we're more positioned to not have that understanding or not have that, excitement when it comes to hunting and foraging and fishing.
Yeah, definitely. We get treated a little bit differently depending on who you're talking to, for sure. The hunting community it's all over the map, man. It's
Yeah.
how we get seen. But I want to dive into something. You mentioned the Texada Island, going blacktail hunting. You got a nice looking blacktail on the back corner there behind you. Organ meat.
Yes.
I want to know a good organ meat recipe while I'm sitting at the campfire. One of those ones, you don't, it's always something, I should say it's always something gets left behind, but there's, the organs are always looked past quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I know you, just talking to you now and following your Instagram, and you're not a guy that's going to leave the organ meat behind.
No.
So I want to know a good blacktail organ meat recipe.
Well, yeah, I've got a couple, but one that, it's a quasi organ. The heart it's our first meal. And it's a really simple way to do something so tasty. But again, it's something that some hunters don't even look at as, they just cut the guts all out and throw it off in a pile. But one of my favorites, which we did last year, was skewers. I always keep a few bamboo skewers or make a few skewers out of a piece of wood, a stick that whittle down. And so I'll take the heart and we'll clean the heart. So we'll take, kind of almost core it and work around the outside. And you can see and separate the chambers at that point. And once you get some of that silver skin off, now we don't need to trim it down to nothing. A little bit of toothiness to it isn't a bad thing. And then I'll throw it in a marinade, while I'm getting everything else going. And marinade can be as simple as, a little bottle of teriyaki sauce you have. I have a soy and wild ginger glaze that I like to do. So I made a nice simple syrup with wild ginger. And then that wild ginger I then, reduced down with a little bit of a soy. So it's very similar to teriyaki. But I'll cube up the heart and then I'll throw it in that marinade and just let it hang out until the next day. And then put those little chunks of deer on a skewer, and then we'll throw that right over the fire. Have the grate, get it down to coals, burn it down, get it nice and hot, even heat distribution, and then grill it on each side until you get to almost medium rare. I like to get to about medium rare with the heart, nothing more, because then it can start to get chewy. And then take it off, let it sit, and just to finish, a sprinkle of sea salt on top, and it's second to none. It's one of those really, really easy ones. And then, you think about the liver. Let's take the liver, let's soak it. Some guys like to soak it in a little salt water. That can help bring a little of that irony flavor out. And I'll do the same thing, but with maybe a cast iron, and I'll just sear it on each side. Or like last year before, we did it on skewers, just over the fire as well. Just simple salt and pepper. Didn't need anything else. Super delicious. It's really two of those items that you can easily make. Anybody can, cut up a heart into cubes and stick it on a stick and cook it over the fire. And really, it's about, like you said, not wasting any of it. And a lot of it can get wasted. Let's see, we can talk about the caul fat, take the caul fat off around the stomach and wrap other meat in that. And oh man, you got a little bit of ground meat, or you don't even need the ground meat. You can wrap it around a steak and grill that steak, and you can have a lot more of that flavor, a lot more of that juiciness coming through. And to me, half of it is the excitement of utilizing another part of that animal. One I haven't tried yet, which, maybe we'll get to one day, is the prairie oysters, or I don't know what you call them on the deer. I know a buddy who has, and, he said it was pretty tasty, but I haven't quite brought myself to that one yet.
How does an Alberta boy not have prairie oysters under his belt? What's going on here?
Okay, well, I've had prairie oysters, but just not off a deer.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what you call them.
Next
the bush oysters? I don't know.
Right on. So what's the dream hunt? What is Chef Jade Berg's dream hunt?
Ooh, that is a real tough one, because I've got a couple of them. Like I said, I've only really hunted on the island or in the coastal area here. Aside from shooting a grouse in the Kootenays, it'd be a toss-up between, some sort of sheep hunt. Like, that is really high up there for me. the idea of going out and obviously getting a little bit of this fat trimmed off of me before I get on that. But going up there and just being up in the Alpine, up as far above the Alpine, just going up into the clouds in pursuit of these animals that, how, in my mind, how often are you going to get that opportunity to get in front of a legal ram? It's kind of like a unicorn, chasing a unicorn, which I think would be so cool. And I see, that to me would be really cool because I really love the idea of what the Wild Sheep Society in BC does. I loved watching the video transmission that Filter Studios did. It was powerful, and it really brought a lot of issues to light in my mind that I didn't realize were happening right in our backyard. And so to be able to go out and contribute to conservation as well as understand an animal that the regular Joe doesn't have that deep understanding of would be really, really cool. And another one would be, somewhere up in the, northern BC, whether it's a moose or a bison, a big animal would be so cool. Because like the black-tailed deer on this island, I was lucky enough to get a decent one last year, but they're not big. They're small-bodied deer, especially when we go to Texada. So to get something that big and know that my family's taken care of, that would be an ultimate dream. And it'd just be a totally different style hunt. We don't call in these black-tailed deer. I don't do a lot of calling. You can, I don't do a lot. It's more spot and stalk. So to be able to, whether it's a moose or even an elk, have that responsiveness to be able to blow on a bugle and have an elk bugle back would be just, goosebump worthy. So, I know you asked for the dream hunt, and I think I gave you about 4 there.
Hey, that sounds like the BC dream. I'm all for it. Everything you just said, I love. You get in the calling battle with an elk or a moose. Those are experiences like bone chilling.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those, like, the noise of an elk bugling, which I don't hear often on the island. Maybe I'm just not out at the right time, but the times that I have, it has made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and it has just solidified that if I'm ever lucky enough to get an LEH draw, that will be one of the best hunts I've ever been on.
Yeah, no, if you can get out there and get into that battle with an elk, even if it's in the middle of the night while you're not hunting, and it's answering back, that growl, the roar right before the bugle is, I don't know, it makes the hair stand on the back of my neck just talking about it, thinking of experiences.
I was going to say, have you had that experience then?
More than once, but I've never actually shot a big bull, but the bugling back and forth in the dark is...
Yeah. Well, and again,
it'll get you every time.
It doesn't have to always end in success for it to be a successful hunt. Those memories are solidified in your brain, and you didn't come home with a big bull elk. And that's half of it. Like going out there and just being out there is success, and being a part of that experience. It doesn't always have to end with an animal on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And sharing the experience with someone as well as, we try to burn it into our children and get them out there, and you're doing the same. And I love to see it. I love to follow along.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right on.
I think that's about it for our time. So where do we, I know we kind of touched base on it before, but where do we find Chef Jade Berg? How do we follow you? Where do we learn more about you? Yeah,
we'll pop over to Instagram. Instagram is where I do most of my posting. I do have a page on Facebook that's Chef Jade Berg, but on Instagram it's a simple Chef_Jade_Berg. And that's where, you'll follow along on my daily or weekly adventures, depending on how often I get to posting. And, if you go to the One Campfire Instagram, I always, really love to support them as well. What they do is great. So if we're able to go over there and find some of the stuff that I'm doing there, I always like to post and direct people back to them because I really believe in that initiative. And, again, on my website, www.wildilecooking.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for taking time out of your evening. And it's a great chatting to you, and looking forward to meeting you, maybe hitting the mountains with you one day.
Yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I love chatting with you, and look forward to the sheep tasting one day, Kyle, and look forward to the mountain meetup, Greg.
Awesome. We're going to throw you a curveball here, and we've got our Salute to Conservation Penticton in February, and it'd be great to feature a chef there. So, going to throw that one out for you and give you some thoughts on that. It'd be great to do something with you up there. So, give that some thought, and it'd be pretty cool to do some sort of seminar or something like that at our event. Love to have you up.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, it'd be really cool to be able to reach some of the people that are there and inspire them and talk about food, even cook up a little bit of food depending on what the scenario goes like. And one thing I've always thought about, which who knows if it's going to be a benefit to you guys, would be auctioning off some sort of dinner experience and to raise funds for the Wild Sheep Society. Something where we can bring some cool people and do a cool campfire experience, whatever that is. But I'd love to contribute in a way.
We appreciate that, man, and we appreciate all the support you've given us through One Campfire, and just as an ambassador for the hunting community, right? You're reaching those corners that we can never do that, and you do a fantastic job. And as we know, the strongest connection to wildlife for most non-hunters is the food aspect of it, and that's the story we need to tell. And man, oh man, do you do a great job of that? So thank you, Jade. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and look forward to the next time.
Awesome. We got to sit down and share some food. I want to break some bread with you one day, buddy. I want to taste your vittles. So
yeah, we'll make that happen sooner than later.
Awesome.
All right.